All right. Wow, it is going to be an amazing day. Today, all of us are launching the second phase of our vision that we launched several years ago. We've talked a lot about that in the past, but when we were a small congregation, just a small group of people in a small auditorium, I can remember vividly the day that I stood before that group of people and cast a vision of saying we're going to be a congregation, a church of all ages reaching a young generation, and that went so far beyond our imagination. And that vision is what has brought us to our new location and also in the last few years of winning thousands of people to Jesus Christ. And it has just been an amazing ride. Today is a day that I want us to remember for the rest of our lives, because today, as I stand here and as you're in this auditorium, it's a day we're going to look back on, reflect back, and say that was the day that we cast this vision. In 2 years, I want us to look over our shoulder and go, wow, can you imagine, can you believe what we've accomplished together? And so today we're going to spell all of that out and talk a little bit about that. Today is a little bit of a different day because I want to just kind of slow down the pace. And I want us to talk about where we're going, refocus, and then launch from this very moment. So I'm going to speak just for a few moments today. I want to go back to a story that I shared with you last week, Nehemiah. And Nehemiah is an amazing leader. Nehemiah was living in Babylon and began to hear the stories of his people back in Jerusalem. Jerusalem and the Israelites, the Jews, they had walked away from God. Now the hand of God had moved off of them. The enemies had come in, raided their city, knocked down the walls of the city, raided the city, burned the city, and killed many of the people. The ones who escaped now had scattered all across the region, and the Jews now are homeless people, struggling to stay alive, living out in the open. Many of them had found caves to live in. Some of them had gone back into the rubble of the city, and they were living there in that rubble. And now Nehemiah comes back, and he begins to process what he sees. And it's worse than he could have imagined. As he walks through the rubble, he has a burning passion in the inside to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. What his ambition is to build the walls first around that city. And he begins to cast the vision and talk about it, but he is met with resistance from every side. Every person he cast this vision to about rebuilding the walls, they say it will never happen in this violent region of the land, because if we start building, they will kill us immediately. They hate the Jews. They hate Jerusalem. They'll never allow it. But Nehemiah was a great, strong leader, and he kept talking about the vision, and this is what we're going to do. And he started rallying people around him, and people believed in the vision. And he had a small group that said, we're with you. And they started building the walls around the city with a tool in one hand and a weapon in the other hand. Now this leads us to Nehemiah chapter 3. Now every time that I have read through the book of Nehemiah, I don't think that I have ever read in completion chapter 3. Because every time I get to chapter 3, Nehemiah writes here, and he lists all of the names that joined him, that helped him rebuild in the portion of the city or the walls that they worked on. And as I get to that section and I start reading all of these names that I cannot pronounce, it's like blah, 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 and it's a linguistic nightmare, and I just turn the page and go to chapter 4. But when you do that, you miss one of the greatest principles of building the kingdom of God. Because Nehemiah talks about every person and how they work next to, and they work next to, and they work next to, and when they worked together, they did something incredible. You see, he talks about how that there were people that gravitated to certain areas of the city, gravitated to certain areas of the wall that they wanted to restore and rebuild a certain gate. And some gravitated to what was called the sheep gate. And they were saying, this is where we want to work. And there were a bunch of them that gathered together around that gate, and they started building the gate and building the wall. And the reason why is because they were the line of the Levites. And for generations, their fathers had been priests. That's where their family line had grown up, was in that section of the city, and they felt drawn to that, and that's what they wanted to rebuild, because they remember that there were sheep that were brought in the sheep gate that was next to the temple, and every day the sheep were brought in to sacrifice before their God, Jehovah, and they believed it was the most important part of the city. While there were others that gathered around what was called the fish gate, and they said, this is the section that we want to build. The reason why is because their father and great-grandfather were fishermen. And that's where they grew up. It's where they played as children. It was in this section of the city, and they were drawn to that. And they said, this is where we want to rebuild. There were others that gravitated to what was called the Fountain Gate. Then there was another gate called the Dung Gate, Animal Dung Gate. That doesn't sound like a great gate to work at. But there were people that gravitated to that because that's where they grew up. Their fathers and their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers were herdsmen and shepherds, but part of their job was hauling out the animal dung out of that gate every single day. And even though it was a smelly, dirty, stinky job, that somebody had to do it, and it affected the entire city. But people gravitated to that. And they worked next to, and they worked next to. And an amazing process took place as they began to build the wall around the city. Now, when you look at chapter 3, you find that it's an amazing picture of the church because they were such a diverse group of people. But when you look around this morning in the house of God, you find that we are a diverse group of people. That we're so different in so many aspects, and that some of us could not be any more opposite, and yet we choose to do life together and come and be a part of the same church family together, and that we all gravitate to different areas of ministry. Because there's a lady in our church that has attended our church for many, many years. She works in the nursery, and many of you know exactly who I'm talking about. And she loves our children. She loves our infants. And what she will tell you is that I work in the nursery week after week after week because it's my passion. And I believe it's the number one ministry of the church. Because when we take your children and we teach them the Word of God, when little children hear the Word of God, it will be with them for the rest of their lives, and they'll never forget the teaching. The most important ministry of the church. And yet, someone else will say, I believe in the nursery, but the greatest ministry in the church is our young adult ministry. It's Wake ministry. Because when I was at UNM, I did not know God, was not a church goer, and yet someone invited me to this thing called Wake. So I came on a Thursday night, walked in those doors, and was introduced to Jesus Christ, radically changed, have never been the same again. And that I believe that Wake, that this young adult ministry is the most valuable ministry in the church because it's this generation that's walking away from church and walking away from God at a greater rate than any other generation. And this is the generation that we have to reach, and it's the greatest ministry in the church. When someone else will say, hey, I believe in Wake, but I believe that the greatest ministry is our outreach ministry. It's CP Serve. It's getting outside of these walls. I mean, all of y'all can do ministry inside here, but we're getting outside these walls. And I mean, we're in the trenches, and we're in the darkness, and we're going into the bars, and we're feeding the homeless. I mean, we're out there where the real issues are. That's the greatest ministry in the church. When someone else may say, you know, I believe in that, but let me tell you what the greatest ministry is. It's Celebrate Recovery. Because I walked into this place, and when I walked in, I was filled with all kinds of hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And yet there were a group of people that rallied around me. They supported me. They introduced me to Jesus Christ. And my life was radically changed. And now I'm in a support group, and I'm being discipled every single week. And I'm telling you, it's the greatest ministry in the church. And you see, we all gravitate to different areas. If you would, we gravitate to different sections of the wall, different sections of ministry, because it's where our passion is, it's where our heart is, and we gravitate to those areas. Because we understand that where we gravitate to is all about changed lives, changing the lives of people, and we have a passion in that direction. You know, the average American church, the average, it says that 20% of that congregation is what causes the church to advance and grow. That 20% of any congregation, 20%, they're the ones that finance the church, resource the church, give of their time and their energy. They're the ones that are full of passion, and because of 20% of the people, the church is able to elevate and move forward. But I wonder what would happen if we were not the average church. Because I don't think God called Copper Pointe to be average. When God created me, God did not create me to be average, but He created me to be exceptional by the power of God who reigns in me. When God created you, He did not create you to be average. He did not create you to follow what everybody else is doing, but He created and designed you to be a world changer, to rise up and for your life to make a difference. And yet we follow other people and we think that's the norm, that they're not doing anything and how could I ever do anything? Well, the reason you can do something is because of the power of Jesus Christ who reigns inside of you. You see, it's all about rising up, understanding that there was a vision that God has placed upon our hearts this morning. And the vision, however we gravitate to different ministries, that it all pulls together for one single ministry. And it has one purpose, and it's changing lives and reaching people. You see, as we work together and we launch an aggressive vision together, then the people that are changed and the people that we win may be your best friend. It may be your neighbor. The person that we bring to Christ might be your spouse, or it may be your son or your daughter, but it's all about reaching people. So I want to talk a little bit about this vision, and we've shared just briefly in the last few weeks, but I want to go into more detail because I want you to fully understand where we're going from today. I'd like to invite Dustin, if he would come and join me on stage. Give him a big hand as he comes. I think all of you know by now that Dustin has been our student pastor for many years, and he's still the oversight of student ministries. But we're now moving him into adult ministries, and this becomes the second part of the vision phase, which I don't think I've ever been as excited about this vision ever about anything in my life. And we've spent a lot of time dreaming and planning and really believing that we're hearing from God and we're getting ready to launch this together. And so, Dustin, I want you to just take a few moments, start laying out some of the things that you're working on, some of the teams that you have developed, where we're headed.
Okay, cool. There's a huge need in our church for adult connection. And when you just say adult ministry, that kind of sounds lame. But when you get to really the nuts and bolts of what we're going to be doing, is there's a big section of the adult population that I'm going to be helping oversee, and there's some really cool, unique, intentional ways that adults can start getting connected. When he first introduced the vision 6 or 7 years ago, that we were going to be a church of all ages reaching a young generation, it was really cool to see how all of that played out. In the last 6 or 7 years, there has literally been thousands and thousands of young people who have come to know Christ, thousands and thousands of young people who have walked through our doors, whether it's children, middle school, high school, college, young adult. I mean, it is just tons and tons and tons, which is amazing. But time does something tricky. Time allows the young generation to all of a sudden grow out of the young generation, and then before you know it, we're all married and have 4 kids. So, the young generation got older, and we're in the church now, and there's this limbo. And what we've been studying and seeing in the church is, obviously we are a church that has a vast variety of ages and demographics and everything. But one of the largest unreached groups in our church, the largest unministered to groups in our church, is the young family, young couple age in that group. So that's kind of been our new bullseye. Obviously, everybody is on the target, and we're going to have something for everyone. But we cannot lose young families. We cannot lose young couples, because our country and our culture is depending on the true biblical definition of marriage. We are depending on strong families. We're depending on fathers leading the way in the homes. We're depending on mothers leading the way in the homes. And that's why we're going to put so much emphasis on the adult population in our church. So one of the first unique things that we're going to be doing, we're going to be launching a brand new small group system. And this small group system is going to be pretty unique compared to a lot of other churches and the way other churches do them. one of the things that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 months is studying how churches around the country do small groups. Because one thing we know, as a church starts to get larger, there's also a need for that same church to grow smaller in those small groups so we can have relationship. One of the worst things that can happen is for somebody to come every single week, maybe have a 5-second friendship with somebody that they see sitting next to them or in the atrium, and then just go back to their homes. What that creates is this idea that church is a compartment in our lives instead of the structure that holds all of the compartments in our lives. Church needs to be the center. It needs to be the thing that sends people out. It needs to be the thing that is really at the center of everything we do. So this new small group system is going to allow us to do that. And one of the things that makes it unique is it's all geographic in our city and in the surrounding areas. So you look at Albuquerque specifically, what we've done is we've divided Albuquerque into 4 different regions. There's going to be a far northeast Heights region, there's a central Albuquerque region, a south Albuquerque region, and a west side Albuquerque region. One of the unique things about studying where people come from that go to Copper Pointe, if you were to sit down in a group with me and I were to say, hey, where do you think most of the people that go to Copper Pointe live in Albuquerque? Where do you think? Most people would probably say, well, this is the far southeast quadrant of Albuquerque, so probably south, maybe central, maybe some from the west side, some from the far northeast Heights. Right now, we have about 40% of our church population coming from the west side of Albuquerque. And wow. So, if you live on the west side, cheer or something. See, those people are crazy. No, I'm joking. Okay, so that's something that allows us to be very, very, very intentional. And again with the far northeast Heights, we were very surprised how many people are driving 20, 25, 30, even 35 minutes to come to Copper Pointe. We're taking city groups out into the city, and that's why they're called city groups. We're going to be having groups led by leaders of all different ages. Some are going to be married, some will be single, some will be 25 years old, some will be 65-year-old leaders of these groups. We are not concerned about everybody fitting into a certain group with a certain age demographic, although there might naturally be some that gravitate that way. We've been kind of having an underground soft launch with these city groups over the last month. We've had 3 groups meet so far, just really being intentional with them and looking and trying to measure what is a win in a city group. What do these look like? In these 3 groups, different groups that have met, we've had 78 different people come to these groups over the course of just 3 of them meeting. You can see the need of people wanting to connect. And I'll be honest with you. At first thought of going to somebody's house that I don't know, when somebody goes, hey, will you come to my house? I'm like, no, I don't really want to do that. But this is what's so interesting though. Even if we get to the place of, maybe our spouse wants to, and we're like, I'm going to stay at home and watch, basketball or something. If we get to the place of just saying, whether or not I want to or feel like this, I know that this is a necessity for my relationship with Christ, to belong to a body of believers, not just show up on Sunday, but to have deep-rooted friendship. That the city groups that I've gone to so far that have only met 1 or 2 times, they have already formed these deep, lasting friendships. They're hanging out together. They're doing life together. It's not all consuming because they only meet once a month. We're not demanding every week of your life. We're not demanding all of these hours. We're saying, hey, we're giving you an opportunity once a month to go to a house in the region that you live in with like-minded people. You can find the group that you fit in the best, even if you're like, I don't really fit in with my whole region. Can I go to the west side because they're all crazy and fun? Sure. Well, let's go. We'll head to a west side group. That's up to you. We're offering this to adults so adults can connect, and we are ridiculously excited. They're going to be on Sunday nights. Starting off, they're all going to be on Sunday nights. They're once a month, and each region is a different Sunday of that month. Eventually, we're going to be expanding into Los Lunas, Belen, Bernalillo, Rio Rancho, East Mountains, and we're really trying to get our bearings. Yeah, we're really trying to get our bearings in Albuquerque and then start expanding as fast as we possibly can.
You guys excited about that? Yeah, it's incredible. The other part of this vision that I am really excited about, is our marriage ministry and moving in that direction. And there's such a need for this because, what we find is that every single week there are just so many people that are lost and they don't know what to do, and they got married in their first year of marriage. It seems like everything is falling apart. And really that's not abnormal by any means. And what it is, people just need to be given some tools, and we want to develop something that Copper Pointe people have the strongest, best marriages because we're educated in that area. So tell us a little bit about the vision.
Yeah, another thing that, I've been researching since I knew that I was going to be transitioning into this position is what are churches around the country doing with marriage ministry? If you start researching this, you are going to find very few churches that put a lot of emphasis on this. And it's really an epidemic because one of the major issues in our society today is the question, the wrong answer to the question, what is marriage? And it's really important for the church to really be defining that with healthy marriages in our church and having people that, when they go through a season of speed bumps, not throwing around the divorce word every 5 seconds, but having the tools and the resources and the friendships to rally around them and to walk them through those seasons. How many of you guys are married? Married people, be proud. Raise your hand high. Now, how many of you guys have a perfect marriage? If you raise your hand, get your hand down.
Mandy, raise your hand.
That guy back there is, hey babe, what about tonight? Anyways, so nobody has a perfect marriage. Nobody does. And this is why we need this in our church. This is why we need it. Because sometimes people view an imperfect marriage as a broken marriage that they need to get rid of. But what we don't realize is that every marriage is imperfect, but every marriage can have a perfect Savior in the middle of it, walking us through these seasons. So this marriage ministry, I think it's pretty cool. So this marriage ministry, what we're going to be doing is we're going to make it very practical and on one sense, and then we're going to have, some events on the other side. So in August, we're going to be kind of having, a grand, big launch in August with the marriage ministry, and we're going to be kicking it off with what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a mini event for 3 weeks in a row, every 9 weeks throughout the entire year. So every mini event is going to be held on Wednesday nights. It's going to be about an hour and a half total. We're going to have free food every single time we do this in the atrium. And what we're hoping, and what we're going to be planning for is not 50 people to be there, but more like 500 people to come to these marriage mini events. So we'll be going through what is love? How do you love your spouse? What does loving your spouse mean? Where we're going through things like the 5 love language, every 5 love languages book, every single mini event, we're going to be flying in or bringing in an expert on that topic on the first Wednesday night of the mini event. The expert is going to be doing a really specific, intentional teaching on what this topic is, and they're going to be introducing books, resources, different things. The next 2 weeks, a staff member or different people from around our community will be teaching, and then over the course of so that'll be 3 weeks in a row. Then we'll have 6 weeks in between where we're going to have very practical classes that people can jump in on. Over the course of time, we will be expanding these classes and growing them based on the need. But the classes we're going to start off with are going to be topics like this. We're obviously going to keep having a premarital class because those are extremely valuable. But what's funny, here's what's funny too. Nobody really minds premarital counseling. That's a necessity. You've got to have premarital. But then all of a sudden you get married and you're on your wedding day, you're like, babe, all the premarital stuff, we made it. And then you get back from your honeymoon, you're like, what did we make? I don't know, we made it, because people don't have a problem with premarital. But then when it comes to being married, I think it's one of the, honestly, Satan's greatest tactics that he's had on marriage. Convincing people that once you're married, allowing yourself to believe that you could have some imperfections is somehow this disastrous thing that we have to keep hidden. But one of the things we know is we have to have coaching in marriage. And so the next class that we're going to be offering is something that's going to be called the first 5 years of marriage. What to expect, the tools you need to succeed, and what's normal and what's not normal. Because again, one of the detriments to marriage is you get off in some island by yourself and you're having trouble and you think that's abnormal, but all you've got to do is look around the room and look at every marriage in here. We go through trouble. And this is about resourcing people and giving us the right tools to work through trouble. And then also the last one that we're going to be doing in this first wave is going to be called Sacred Marriage. What does the Bible actually say about marriage? how does the Bible define marriage? What does the Bible say about people that would like to live together before marriage? What does the Bible say about the guidelines and the tools we need in marriage to have, to stay far away from infidelity and far away from all of that stuff? What does the Bible say about, submission in marriage? Does it really mean that wives have to submit and men are these domineering? No. But what does the Bible actually say, and what does it mean? So those are the 3 topics we're going to be starting with, and it really is, I'm going to be leading this. I'm the Pointe staff person for it, and I am trying to create ministries that my wife and I would want to, not just have to, but would want to put on the top of our priority list, and things that we would enjoy going to. So what we're doing with these ministries is, we're really creating a standard of not creating something that people go to because I have to in order to have a good marriage, but I want to. This is life-giving, it's fun, it's exciting, and it's practical and good for our marriage.
It's one of the main visions of where we're going is connecting adults as part of this vision. And so we want to make this very, very easy, and we've designed 2 tracks that you can go down. So why don't you explain that real quick?
Yeah, right before we jump into the 2 tracks, one of those tracks I specifically want to talk about real quick. We've heard multiple times this morning about CP Serve. CP Serve is a ministry that we've had for, several years, I think 4 or 5 years, right? Shelly in here? 4 or 5 years, right? Correct? 5, 4, cool. Yeah, I did that, I was right. 4 or 5 years at the church. CP Serve is massive, and it is awesome. But one of the things Shelly and I have been talking about the last few months really is trying to get CP Serve a little bit easier to grab onto for the everyday person that comes to Copper Pointe. We're tackling huge issues like, human trafficking, slavery around the world. We're tackling massive issues like that where we're trying to, be chipping away at something like human trafficking around the world. That's huge. We're also going into different areas of Albuquerque that take a lot of strategy, a lot of commitment. So one of the things we've been talking about is what are some simple, quick things that we can do that really are truly impacting our city, that people can jump in, grab a hold of, and serve in our community. So CP Serve is really about serving in the community, and it's powerful. One of the ideas that Shelly had that she brought up in a meeting a few weeks ago, and my mouth hit the table in awe of how cool this idea is. As churches grow, in number, in resources, and commitment from people, we can accomplish more and more. So where we're at right now as a church, we can do a lot, but we can also dream a lot. And one of the things that Shelly's going to do with CP Serve is create something called city tours, to where people that already go to our church or all new people that start coming to our church can sign up for these tours where we're going to be taking people around in Copper Pointe vehicles around the cities with tour guides, and we're going to be showing people around the city, here are the massive needs of Albuquerque. Here is the most dense population of homelessness. I want you guys to look at this and to really keep this on the forefront of your mind. Here are the ideas that we have in the next 3, 4, 5 years with homelessness and hunger in Albuquerque, with battered women, with children who have been abandoned, with the foster care system in Albuquerque, with orphanages. And so we're going to be going around Albuquerque and showing Copper Pointe members and attendees the needs of our city, because we may not be able to solve them now, but that doesn't mean we can't have a vision to solve them in the future. And the more and more people we can get on board with what we want to do in the city, the more, the bigger the reality is of those coming to pass. So CP Serve is exciting. Are you guys excited about that kind of stuff? I'm super excited. So the 2 tracks, and then I'll be done talking. I'm sorry if I'm talking a long time. The 2 tracks I was just so excited about this stuff, I can't even take it. The 2 tracks of involvement are this. Again, any church you go to, as the church starts growing, just a few years ago, we were just at a few hundred people with Copper Pointe, and now, we have somewhere averaging on the weekend between 26 and 2,800 people, and 4,000 to 5,000 people in Albuquerque call Copper Pointe their home church. This is incredible. It's incredible. So the more and more people come, the more complicated church can be if we're not careful. We don't want church to be complicated. We want it to be powerful, but we want to keep it simple. So as new people start coming, and even people that have already been coming for a while, maybe some of you, we're going to create a very simple process to get involved. And one of the really unique things is we really have to, establish what is a volunteer at Copper Pointe? What is a leader at Copper Pointe? We really want to make sure that there's a difference between people volunteering and people leading. We want people with high accountability, with the maximum accountability leading our children. We don't want somebody just saying, hey, I'll volunteer to work with our kids. Okay, cool, jump in. We want to know, we already do, but we want to make sure that person's a leader. We want to know that this person is bought into our church, bought into the vision, the people that are leading our children and our teenagers and our college students, the people that are representing our security team and guest services team, and the people that are, that you start working your way through leadership structures in our church. We want to know that these people are leaders, but we also want to have a huge opportunity for people that just want to get involved. They're newer or they haven't been here for a while, and there's two very simple tracks. One of them, so to get involved in Copper Pointe, which is our new umbrella of we want everybody to get involved, we can serve our community through CP Serve, or we can connect with each other through city groups. We're going to keep it super simple like that. And involvement with worship teams and children and youth and different aspects of media, well, those opportunities will come out of you serving in CP Serve or connecting in city groups. And so to be pulled into kids, we'll say, hey, this person's been extremely committed to city groups. They've been serving with CP Serve. I've really watched their character. I've watched their commitment level. They would be a great candidate to work with our children if they go through the background checks and different things. And so we know this person knows what it means to serve. This person is connecting with other people. They are growing in their walk with God. And so super simple. We can connect in city groups, and we can serve in CP Serve, and we're trying to get it to a place where every single person that attends Copper Pointe can belong somewhere, and we're not creating this complicated system, but it's simple. Serve the community, connect with others.
Very good. See, one of the things that we have to do, and this is why we're meeting like this today, is that this vision is going to drive us to have to buy more space in this building. And so immediately what we have to do, and the first thing that we've got to do is build out the children's auditorium. It's already boxed in. It's right outside off the atrium. So that's number one. The second thing that we need to do is buy 6,000 square feet of space that is right next to our student auditorium. And it'll be right down this hallway, but we need to buy that, and we do not own it. And so that's going to be one of the first things we have to do to hold this and to house all of this. And so that becomes a major part of the vision as well. And then, Dustin, I'm going to let you wrap this up, but it's an amazing vision, and as we go through time, we'll share more and more, but it's developing very, very quickly. It's not something that's down the line, but something that's already in the process of building teams already, and this is already moving before we've even shared it today. So you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, here's what's so cool about where all this is going. Shifting some of our vision to adult ministry is not leaving behind kids and youth. We are always going to be a church about the young generation. Always. Because without the young generation, we're nothing. But what's so cool now about our church is I believe we are becoming one of the most well-rounded, powerful churches around, because we have one of the greatest children's ministries. I've gotten the opportunity to travel a lot and to see churches of 10, 15, 20,000 people. Our children's ministry is right there. We have one of the greatest children's ministries in the country. One of the greatest middle school and high school ministries in the country, 212. Our college young adult ministry, yeah, it's pretty cool. My brother Brandon is being called by churches of 20,000, asking Brandon how to run a college young adult ministry. Wake is second to none. You look at our recovery program with Celebrate Recovery, second to none. We really view to some of the experts in that field, and they're right here in our church. You look at the marriage ministry we're forming, the connection with our small groups, our CP Serve outreach. You look at our weekend services and how dynamic they are and what we're doing and what we're accomplishing. I could go on and on and on and on and on. When you look at this, what you're going to know as somebody who attends Copper Pointe is we don't play games and we're not messing around. If we are going to exist as a church, we are going to be a church. We are going to reach people, and we're going to be serious about it, and that's what's so exciting. You're not a part of fluff. You're a part of a soul-winning, a people-loving machine that we are excited to be a part of. And really, truly, it's a yeah, give God a hand with that. And, God, he's talked a lot, but God gave, my dad a promise a long time ago, a calling that, if we do this thing right, that this church could be the church that really starts changing things in Albuquerque. And again, that's so exciting. But when God promises something, this is what we know. He is not only a promise maker, God is a promise keeper. Yeah. And we are living the dream and the vision that God gave you. And I literally love the fact that we can stand on God's promises.